Hey folks, I'm Chuck Black. We're doing quokka-prime from scratch, and today we begin to look at device monitoring. Specifically in this lesson, we will be reading device information from the devices.yaml file. So let's get started. So before we begin, I want to point out that I am running this on a Mac. As you can see by the taskbar thingy at the bottom, this is a Mac. How did I do this? Well, as you can see, I have a new repository. It's called quokka-prime scratch. That's where I'm storing all of the quokka-prime code. So I put it up there. I pulled it down to the Mac, and I am running things here. So if everything looks a little bit different, that would be why. So we will be building the device monitor. Now, I've already built a device monitor, so I'm going to go and open the existing quokka-prime device monitor. Since I've already built it once, I will be able to consult what has been done before and know exactly what I should do. So I'm going to load in device monitor into my window, and once I have done that, I'm going to look at it and I can see, okay, there's a few things that I'm doing in here. I've got napalm, I've got argparse, I've got YAML, I've got socket. There's a bunch of stuff that I'm doing in this. I won't do it all initially. What I want to do is build it a little bit from scratch. So we're going to do the YAML part first. Now, I called this discovery beforehand because I was mimicking what was done with hosts. I'm actually going to call it something different in our version. So this is the important YAML piece. This is where we read the YAML file, and that is what I will be creating in our device monitoring. So I'm going to split the windows here so that I can look at the old version that's already been implemented alongside the version that I am doing. So I'm going to have to first go here to monitors and create a new Python file, and I will name it device monitor. I think that's what I call it. So I've got a new file called device monitor. Go ahead and add it to Git PyCharm for me. And now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to implement this discovery functionality. As I said, I'm going to be calling it something different. So we will go ahead and begin to do that. Now I'm going to need YAML, so I'm going to import that. I know I have to do it. The name of my function I'm arbitrarily choosing, read devices YAML, simply because that's a little bit more descriptive and I can't think of a more creative name. So let's go and get started. Here's a print statement. That's probably useful to print something out at the beginning. Now here's the YAML part. I'm going to open the file. This is not YAML yet. I'm just going to open this devices.yaml file for reading. And this is what I normally do. I'm going to have to give it a name to the object that references the file. I'm calling it YAML in. And now I'm going to grab my YAML devices from this file, and the way that I do that is I just read it in. Still, I've just read stuff. I haven't done anything YAML-ish yet using the YAML library. This is where I'm doing it. I'm going to say YAML.safeload. If you want more information about this, look at my YAML lesson on Python 52 weeks. But this is what I'm going to do, a safe load of YAML devices. I'm going to put them in this data structure called devices, which will be a dictionary of all of my devices. Now I'm going to have to deal with both existing devices that have already been discovered as well as these new ones that I read in from YAML. And so that's what this function call is going to be. It's going to make a REST call to get the existing devices. At this point, I'm safe to go through and begin to iterate through the devices from YAML that I have read in. And when I do this, what I'm going to do is first thing is I'm going to attempt to get the IP address. So my device is going to be a dictionary item. It's going to have a key called IP address. And I'm going to use the socket library get host by name function, passing in the device's name in order to get, the host name in order to get the actual IP address of that device. I have to put it in a try except because if this fails, then I don't want my program to exit. So I want to catch multiple types of errors here. I have a couple different socket errors that I'm looking for, and if I don't get it back successfully, I'll print something out. So I'm just going to paste that print statement so I don't bore you by typing it in. The important thing though is that I'm just going to set the IP address to a blank because I don't actually know what it is. And so that is what I'm going to do in this particular situation, my attempt to get the IP address. Now the next thing, I'm going to set the availability and response time conditionally based on whether this is an existing device. In other words, if it's an existing device, I want to keep the existing availability and response time as it is. If it's a new one, I'm going to give those initialized values. So right here, I'm saying if the device name, that's the YAML device that I read in, is in existing devices, then I'm going to do this thing, which is actually something you need to make sure you understand this. It's not terribly difficult, but it is referencing a number of things related to the way that the data is structured in my existing device. So what I'm doing is I'm looking in existing devices using the name of the YAML device. And when I do that, I'm going to extract the availability, as you can see right there. So that's what the key is going to be. I'm going to get the exact device as availability as it exists, and then I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to do the response time. And so that's what you see here. I'm actually going to change this to response time, and this later one to response time as well. I'm going to figure out how to appropriately spell response time in both of those situations. As you can see, I've done it incorrectly and I fixed it. And now we're ready to move on to the next, which is the case where this is a brand new device. So the first time through, this is the code that will hit in subsequent times if the device doesn't exist and we have something new in the YAML file, then this is what we'll do. And that code is just basically initializing everything to its initial state. As you can see, not much is set in that situation. I will have done the IP address though. Now the last thing is going to be to call update device, which is going to go back to our server, and it is going to actually tell it to update the device with this new information that we have discovered. Now the last thing we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to stub these two functions out. Update device, I'm going to stub that out, and get devices, I'm going to stub that out because that's a fair amount of work in terms of me talking to you about what we're doing. So for get devices, we're going to return nothing. That's kind of going to be okay because we'll return no existing devices and we can then test things. And then for update device, we're just not going to do anything. So we will do a pass. And now we should be able to test this thing. Okay, so it turns out I'm not quite ready to test because although I've written my function to read the devices, I never call it. I don't have a main function. So I'm going to copy basically what I did in my host monitor code, the simple version here. And I'm just going to copy it and paste it and do a little bit of cleanup so that when it prints out what it's doing, it says device monitor instead of host monitor. And then I also will need a main function. So let's go ahead and grab some of this main function. I don't really need much of it. In fact, I don't need hardly any of it right now. I could have written it myself, but I'll go ahead and copy that little bit and I will paste it in here. And I'll get rid of the subnet address because I don't really need that. And my function that I'm going to call is called read devices YAML. So I'm going to change discover host to read devices YAML so that we will be calling it. And then I will also get rid of the parameter. So closer to being ready. Okay, one last thing to do before we actually test it, and that is to print something out. I'm going to add a print statement in update device where I print out the device that I'm allegedly updating, and we'll see what the output looks like in that way. Now let's go to my terminal window and run this thing and see if it actually works. So here's my run statement, and you can see no such file or directory. It's looking for devices.yaml. and I realize, oh, I need to have my devices.yaml file in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my existing file and copy it in. First, I need to create my own devices.yaml. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm adding it to Git. There's going to be nothing in it. And so that will be that. And I will go to my existing devices.yaml from quokka-prime, and I will take the content. Once I've loaded it in, I'll take the content of that and select it all and copy it. And then I'm going to go to my file and I'm going to paste it. And now my devices.yaml actually exists and it has all of this information in it. That means I can go and I can run it and see what happens. So let's go ahead and do that. And lo and behold, it has printed my 3 devices that I have read successfully in from YAML. So at this point in time, I know that I have those devices loaded into my program, my device monitor program. So let's review where we are and what we've done. We have read in our devices from the devices.yaml file, and we have put them into Python data structures so that we can now begin to do stuff with them. In our code, we created a function called read devices YAML where we did a safe load. We loaded the appropriate items into the dictionary, and then we have stubbed out get devices, which we will add later, and our update device, which doesn't really update, it just prints it. So we're ready to move on. As always, if you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for watching this episode on quokka-prime from scratch. I'm Chuck Black. If you do have questions or comments, feel free to leave a message with this video. I'm also on Twitter at Chuck A. Black. If you want to send email with a question, comment, or just to say hi, the email address you can reach me at is python.52.weeks@gmail.com. Also, remember to subscribe to this channel. I hope these lessons are helping you to achieve your goals towards becoming a real software developer. So long for now, and see you at the next episode.